Howdy, y'all. I'm going to tell you a story. This is a Native American folktale, and as a folktale, it is in the public domain. Okay. Once there was a maid, a lovely maid, and she came to a likely age that she decided she wanted to get married. And so she made herself very presentable. She washed her face until it shone. She oiled her hair with sweet-smelling oils and made herself look so beautiful. Then she went to the river where there was a lot of activity about and found a likely-looking spot, a log right in the sun. And she seated herself upon the log and she called out in a high, clear voice, "Anybody want a wife? Anybody want a wife?" Well, directly, a brave came up to her and said, "Why, yes, I want a wife." She said, "Oh, how nice. Well, if I were your wife, where would we live?" He said, "Well, we would live deep in the forest." She said, "Oh, dear. Well, what would we eat?" And he said, "Well, we would eat roots and hawthorn berries." And she said, "Oh, dear. I don't care for roots and hawthorn berries, and I get nervous in the dark forest, and I don't believe I would make you a very good wife at all. I'm so sorry." And discouraged a bit, but not giving up, she went down the river a little ways more, where there was other people about and some activity going on, and she found a likely looking spot, a lovely rock there in the sun. And she seated herself upon it and arranged herself so she looked her very best. And she called out in her high, clear voice, "Anybody want a wife? Anybody want a wife?" Well, a brave come up to her. He said, "Well, yes, I want a wife." She said, "Oh, okay. Well, if I was your wife, where would we live?" He said, "Well, we would live on the side of the mountain." She said, "Oh, well, but what would we eat?" And he said, "Well, we would eat lizards and grubs and snakes and, the kind of stuff that lives on the side of the mountain that we could get." She said, "Oh, dear. This won't do at all. I don't like living on the side of the mountain. In fact, I've never even been up there. And I don't eat lizards and grubs and snakes and have no idea how to prepare them. I'm not the wife for you. I'm so sorry." And so she moved on down the river. A bit more discouraged, she decided this was it. If she couldn't find her a decent husband this time, she was just going to give up. So she came to a likely spot, a lovely warm stretch of sand, and she sat down upon it, and she looked around. There weren't as much activity around there, but she was going to try. And so she called out once again in her high, clear voice, "Anybody want a wife? Anybody want a wife? Does anybody want a wife?" And a brave came right up and he said, "Well, yes, I'm looking for a wife, but I've had a little trouble and I haven't found any that are suitable for me." She said, "Oh, well, I understand. I also have had the same troubles." She said, "Well, if I were to be your wife, where would we live?" He said, "Well, darling, we'd live under the whole dome of the sky." Oh, she liked that. She said, "Oh, my. Well, what would we eat?" And he said, "Well, we would eat seeds and grains and the plants that grow on the prairie." She said, "Oh, I would like that. I know how to prepare seeds and grains, and I know how to store them. And I love seeds and grains. They're my absolute favorite. I believe that I could make you a fine wife, and that you would make me a fine husband, and we're very agreeable and suited to each other." And so, having agreed, the maid and the brave flew off into the sky together. because they actually were the first birds of spring. And if you listen in the spring, you can hear the maids calling to the braves. Anybody want a wife? Anybody want a wife? That's the end. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the story. Y'all stay sweet.